Content warning. Things can get pretty rough in prison. We're going to be talking about some subjects that some people might find disturbing. Hi, I'm Amelia Saw, and this is On Guard, a podcast about what really goes on inside prison. And it comes from the best source in town, the prison officers. Unlike police, who go looking for the bad guys, each day a prison officer turns up at work, they're guaranteed to find them. Imagine doing a job where every shift was spent rubbing shoulders with Australia's worst criminals. These are the heroes who keep the country's rapists, serial killers and child molesters exactly where the rest of us want them, locked away in prison. But you don't walk away from a job like that unscathed. These guys have got stories. Most of them are shocking, some of them are tragic, and others are just bloody funny. The one thing I can guarantee is that you've never come across anything like it. Meet Maria Costigan. She's a recently retired corrections officer from the Alexander McConaughey Centre in our capital city, Canberra. It's the only prison in the ACT, and it runs by slightly different rules to most correctional centres. But for Maria, prison got personal when her niece Tara Costigan was murdered by her then partner Marcus Rappel. Rappel was sentenced to 32 years for murdering Tara with an axe and was taken into custody at the same prison where Maria worked. Maria, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Awesome.
So, 6 years in corrections.
Yeah, about that long.
You're a brave woman.
I loved it.
Did you?
I did.
Tell me.
I don't know if there's many people that can say that, but I loved working there.
Tell me what you loved about it.
It was busy for a start, and I guess, I like helping people. I liked helping people. It is a different kind of jail. There's more prisoner, correctional officer, chatting, and you actually have to interact with them. It's part of your duties to interact with them, where in a lot of other jails, they're separated. You've got your detainees, you've got your correctional officers, and that's it. But Canberra is very different. So,
sounds like a big hippie commune.
Well, it was very different, yeah.
So a human rights prison, what does that mean in daily practice?
So it was in a daily practice. So we did not carry, there's no guns, no weapons. And in a way I could see that we posed as no threat. Probably not as much officers being attacked because they don't feel threatened. The detainees don't feel threatened because we're not carrying, a gun or anything. Maybe at night time we might carry, like handcuffs. Well, there's still handcuffs there, but, like batons and things like that you may carry at night. But even towards the end, nobody carries them either.
You're saying that actually decreased the amount of assaults on prison officers?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because they don't feel threatened.
Right.
Every correctional officer is different as well. So if you go in, you play the hard ass, well, they're going to play up on you. But for me, it was go in there, give them what I'm paid to do anyhow. I'm paid to look after them. I'm not there to judge them. I'm just there to look after them. So I don't care what they've done, but it's my job to follow through with whatever their requests are generally.
So that's an interesting approach when you say you don't care what they've done. So you were able to completely separate, the crime some of these people had committed to interacting with them on a daily basis.
Yes, actually. Like when I first started, it was a big thing to read the statement of facts to find out what people have done. but then it gets to the point where you don't really want to know what they've done. You're just there to look after them, and that's it. So sometimes Corinne will say to you, oh, well, do you know what I'm in here for? You know what I'm here for? I'm like, no, I don't. No clue why you're here. And I think sometimes that bodes. I mean, when there's pedophiles or things done to kids, I think it's hard. There was one guy that was in there that was, I don't know, he just had this expectation, and I found it very frustrating with him. But the only thing I said to him was, I just turned around and I said, you're in jail, mate, you know. Do you know why you're here? So it's not my fault that you're here. You've done something. You're in jail. Stop expecting so much to be done for you. You know, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, my God, you pedo. But you can't say that.
So that he was in for a pedophilia charge?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Horrible, man.
So, I mean, you were in a pretty unique situation because, you know, you're saying that you didn't care what these people's crimes were, and then all of a sudden you've had a very personal crime committed to you that resulted in the loss of your niece, Tara, who you were very close to.
Exceptionally close, yeah. She was more like my daughter.
And then...
I hate him.
You hate him?
I hate him.
I think that's pretty reasonable.
A life which touched plenty, but which was also cut short. Hundreds of people filled the Albert Hall, still shocked at the death of the mother of three. Tara Costigan remembered as someone who loved and was loved by her family.
She always gave us big cuddles when we were sad, and lots of the time just because she loved us.
Our families have lost an amazing daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, a niece, a cousin, an aunt, a friend. A community mourns for this loss for our beautiful girl.
Today's verdict does not bring me peace. Tara remains dead.
Tara was only 28, at home in Canberra breastfeeding her 1-week-old daughter when the baby's father, Marcus Rappel, broke in with an axe and, in front of Tara's 2 young boys, attacked her, angry that she'd taken out a domestic violence order against him the day before. The axe severed her spine and cut an artery. Her sister Ricky tried to help, frantically calling 000.
She's got an accident wound on her neck.
Okay, can you describe it in more detail, please?
No, I don't. She's hardly breathing on her.
Tell me what happened.
The boys were sitting in the lounge room. Her sister and her sister's partner were in, so they decked out the whole shed so that it was or the garage, decked it out to be another room. He walked up to the front door with an axe while the boys were sitting there and smashed the door and the glass. The boys raced towards Ricky and where her sister and the boyfriend were. Tara was up in the bedroom feeding Bub at the time. Bub was 8 days old, and she came out, saw Marcus, and then raced towards the garage as well, where everybody else was. But by that time, he had hit her in the back. She fell on top of Bub. Bub had some bruises and had to be checked out, the next day, a few days. So, and then one of the boys actually picked up Bub off the floor and then sort of jumped over Mum and raced out the back door.
Here's Tara's sister Ricky on those last moments she spent with Tara.
At one point, I told her that her boys were fine and that they were safe and that she didn't have to worry about them because I'd look after them. I told them that they loved her and that I did too. And it was a few seconds after that she mumbled something, but I couldn't work out what it was. And then it was probably not even a minute after that she took her last breath.
Oh, Maria, it's just such a...
It's hard to fathom, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was aware of the story, but every time I hear it, it gives me goosebumps because it's so horrific. And it's equally as unfathomable, I think, that not only has it happened to you, but then you have to see this person in your work.
On a daily basis.
Tell me what happened. He obviously got charged, and then you rocked up at work today and saw him. Was it a surprise?
Oh, well, obviously after what had happened with Tara, I had a month off.
It's not long in the scheme of things, though. After
not really, but I had to go back to work. There were so many other things going on, and for me, I'm a busy person. I needed to keep busy, so I went and saw the bosses, big bosses out at the jail. Mr. Rushton was out there at that time. For me, he was a great person, and I chatted with him and another boss. And they said that it would be okay for me to come back to work, but at any stage, if I felt like I was going to crumble, to contact them, and that they would help me out. So I went back to work on the Monday. Mr. Rushton, who was running the prison at the time, he made sure everybody knew what was going on, everybody knew what had happened, and he made sure that everybody was mindful whenever they were moving Rappel, taking him to health, doing anything like that, that they were keeping an eye out for me. And it was okay in the beginning. It really was okay. But then things fell by the wayside. A whole lot of more recruits came in, and that care, or employee care, really dropped by the wayside to the point where I'd be walking around in the jail area, and the first time was he yelled out to me and he said, you're a baby stealer, and started yelling out all these things. There were a few times he'd be out on the oval and I'd be walking along the fence line and he'd walk along the fence line intimidating me, and just lots of things like that. I remember once walking out of the health building, which is where I used to do a lot of my shifts initially, and he walked straight up behind me with a group of people that were leaving visits and said, "How you going, miss?" Because that's what all the other crims, and I turned around and he was right behind me. But
do you think he was trying to intimidate you by doing that?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So how did you make sense of that in your mind?
I think the first time before I'd actually seen him, I said to myself, no, he's not the strong one here. I'm the strong one. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to do this. And then I actually saw him and I near shit myself. I just raced and got out of there, and I thought, wow, I'm not actually as strong as I thought I was. So
no, you're pretty strong. I mean,
yeah, and I am incredible. I do believe I am incredibly strong. I'm blessed with amazing parents. But each time I saw him, I got stronger, and I could see things were not going to be good for him because, he's an asshole. He's not a nice person. And that he's not a nice person. He wasn't a nice person to Tara. He wasn't a nice person to her kids before it happened. He wasn't a nice person in jail, and he's paying for it as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad the death penalty's not in, because I want him to suffer.
So when you say he's paying for it in jail, do you mean just that he's in custody, or do you mean that he's doing it tough, particularly in there?
He's doing it tough. So he is not in Canberra Correctional Centre anymore. Mm-hmm. Maybe 2 years ago, he was moved because he was becoming unmanageable in Canberra Correctional Centre. And pretty much, the crims have a lot to do with running the place. He was becoming unmanageable by the detainees as well.
How was he unmanageable?
So he has an arrogance. He has a real arrogance, and there's a ranking in each area of the jail, and he didn't live by that ranking. He, wanted to do things his way, and he was making a lot of enemies of a lot of people that were quite high up.
Has that ever
bikers.
played out in Retribution? Has he been beaten up in there, or?
Oh, once or twice. Oh, sorry, I'm not laughing.
I think if yes, of course no one's supposed to laugh at things like that, but when we think about what happened to Tara, then
it's not
fair
even
enough.
just what happened to Tara. It's about her kids and Ricky are still living through this nightmare.
Yeah, of course.
They saw it. They were, like 9 and 12 or I know I'm hopeless with ages and that, but they were very young boys.
Mm. Oh, yeah, you'd never get over that.
No, you don't. And even Ricky, her sister, she's so young. She's got a little bulb of her own now, and she's an amazing woman, but, she blames herself. Why couldn't she help her? Nobody was going to be able to help Tara on that day.
No.
Nobody.
No.
So, but Marcus is, he had a really bad flogging in Canberra jail, and he got into another fight with another gentleman with using shivs as well. And
now, what's a shiv for anyone who doesn't know?
A handmade weapon, knife.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are they made out of?
Oh, anything. Toothbrush, any piece of material. It's amazing. All that time in the world, they got plenty of time to make things.
So he got into a fight with shivs with another guy?
Yep. And I think things were getting to the point where there wasn't any place in the jail, Canberra jail, where he was safe. So he was moved out to Goulburn jail.
Mm-hmm.
And within the first month there, he was flogged.
Do you know any details about that? Do you know who did it, or?
No, I honestly don't waste any energy on him, whether it be negative or positive. When people will tell me these things, I'm like, yep, that's good. I hope it hurt. I hope he's in pain. So I don't know how many times he's been flogged out there. He was in Long Bay Hospital at the beginning of this year due to being apparently a self-harm, but he doesn't have the balls for that. So I would say that somebody's done that as well. And then he came back and had another fall in the shower, which is, done himself another little mischief, I guess. And now he's gone to Wellington jail.
Right.
So, yeah.
Do you get updated by kind of victims' services when he's moved, or?
So victims of crime, yeah. There's a few of us that are registered with victims of crime. So because in New South Wales they move detainees around quite regularly, we don't get updated on when they move around. But I think being a correctional officer, you tend to have links with other correctional officers.
Of course, yeah.
And that's how you find that stuff out.
So, I mean, he was obviously an example of a pretty horrible piece of work that you unfortunately dealt with personally, but also through your work.
Yeah.
Was there anyone else you came across in there who kind of really ruffled your feathers?
A female detainee, I think the first time, and I was only very, very new, and she's an ex-kickboxer, and so I was a CO1 at the time. The CO2 and I were trying to get her to go into her cell. And
the CO2's a manager, is that right?
Yeah, like a supervisor.
Yeah.
And so the CO2, she walked straight up to this CO2 and attempted to headbutt. I don't know how she missed, but she missed him. And then she pelted chairs at him and pelted apples. And I was just standing in the background going, whoa. And I think she's probably the only one that has ever really like ruffled my feathers or made me step back and go, wow. Thank goodness she took a liking to me for some unknown reason. But yeah, so I was very, very lucky with her. I still had situations where she was going off, but she never put her hands on me. And I was always able to somehow calm her down and not have to get the security team in and things like that. So very, very lucky. But I've seen her being manually picked up by officers, male officers, and even a lot of male officers at Canberra Jail will say she's probably the scariest one of all, because she just seemed to have no pain tolerance, like zero pain tolerance. So,
there's also probably a lot of regulations about, use of force, I would imagine, isn't there, on corrections officers, particularly in a human rights jail?
Well, and I think now most officers are too scared to put their hands on detainees at all anymore. I don't delve too much into Canberra Jail because I had I didn't have a good ending with the Canberra Jail, so I'm not really quite sure. But I know that morale is shocking, and officers are just too scared to put their hands or do anything for ramifications of what could potentially happen, like being stood down.
So is that what happened to you? Were you stood down?
So I was stood down at the beginning of last year. I had 5 allegations made against me. Oddly enough, with all the allegations, there were no policy and procedures that were put in place. There were no reports put on me. There was one report, and that was one of the allegations was me giving a detainee red cordial.
Wild.
Yes, I know. And I put my hand up. I put my hand up right at the beginning and said, yes, I did do that.
Can we just go back? Did you smuggle in red cordial to give to the detainee?
No. So red cordial, so we all take food into the place, and I worked in the women's area majority of the time, so up in the cupboard there were a lot of things. If I was doing, night shift or rather than taking in food every day, and a lot of officers do it, a lot of officers don't, but there are plenty of officers that take food in, cans, cordial. So I had it up in the cupboard, and she asked me for some, and I let her have some. So, and, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. I don't disagree with that. But when I look back and see everything else that was happening in the place, I just thought, red cordial, that's nothing. I mean, officers give plenty of other things besides red cordial. So, didn't think anything of it. But I had an officer who obviously didn't like me, and decided that she would start writing a log of everything I did for about 3 months, and then took it all to management.
I've heard from other officers that sometimes the fellow screws are almost worse than the inmates. That's what they say. They say there's a fine line between a detainee and an officer. They say that quite often, and they are. And look, to be honest, I loved the job there. I didn't get involved with the Fat Girls Club, which is what I call it. I used to go to the gym at lunchtime while these women sat around the table. They bitched and whinged about all the other people and all the bad things that were happening and, management this, management that. But I wasn't interested. So I used to go to the gym and just not be involved. I never went to the cafeteria or any of that sort of thing. I just did my own thing at lunchtime. What about when you're dealing with detainees? there must be a different approach for dealing with the female prisoners to the male.
It's so different. And I think the females, a lot of the officers that were working with the females, and, and there's just been this this way of treating the women detainees very differently to the men. And certain officers would work with the females, and certain officers worked well with the females. And quite often, most people didn't like working with the females because they are hard work.
Harder than the men?
Oh, way harder.
Why?
Because, I don't know. Maybe it's because their cycle, they're all on the same cycle at the same time. It's like a psycho house. It's crazy. And they get, 1 minute they love each other, next minute they're fighting and want to kill each other. So
someone told me, another officer also told me that there was a thing with the full moon in prisons, and when there's a full moon, everyone acts out. Is that true?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like when the babies are all born, apparently. The nurses will say all the babies are born on the full moon.
Did you ever see any kind of full-on riots or any?
Look, I was very lucky. I think when I was a supervisor in the women's area, I set the standard right from the beginning about how my day was going to run. So when I open up the cell door to say good morning, because that's what you do, they don't get out of bed, you go in there and you check, make sure that they're okay. And my thing was, you say good morning to me, and if you don't, you get the door slammed. Now, and because they'd be like, oh my God, it's too early, and I would say, well, I've been up and I'm saying good morning to you. I've been up for ages. All I expect is good morning, miss. That's it.
What time does that happen?
So usually we get to work, it's about 7:30, maybe around 8 o'clock. We would have our morning muster. After all the officers would get together in the morning, do a handover, and then we'd all go off to our own locations. So we'd get up, which means they didn't have to get up. They could get up whenever they like. This is the difference between, I think, Sydney jails, or not Sydney, but New South Wales jails and ACT. ACT, they have nothing to do. A lot of the programs are cancelled. Their industry is the bakery, but that only caters for a handful of detainees. So there's not a lot for them to do. So they sit around and they're idle for a lot of the day. But with the women, I made sure that I would do card making with them. I would do physical education with them. If it was hot, I'd let them get the hose out and let them hose each other down, because when there's a lot of heat around, that's another thing. It's like a full moon. They go nuts in the heat as well, as you can imagine. So I was very lucky that I didn't have anything happen while it was on my watch. But there were definitely a lot of self-harms, which is quite huge in the prison system, and stabbings. I think with the detainees that are coming into the Canberra prison now, they're not just your normal, easy-go-lucky crims. You're getting some hard-ass bikers and things like that. So things are getting quite volatile in the prison now.
There's one particular former biker, Comanchero Alex Bourne, who is in there and who I believe caused a bit of trouble. Can you tell me what you know about him?
So actually Alex and Marcus clicked initially, but I think Alex was one of the guys who actually said to me, or said to other officers to tell me that I needed to watch myself because because Marcus was after me. I know that there are a lot of guys in there that have done some horrible things. I think being an older female, there is a certain amount of respect. I was not a nasty or cruel or belligerent correctional officer. If it's time to go in, it's time to go in, but I'm not yelling and screaming and abusing him or calling him names. I'm asking him nicely. So I got the same response from them. So I never had any problems with Alex Bourne, except that he and the guys that he was with kind of looked out for me in a way.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, there were a lot. It wasn't just his crew. I had other detainees that would come up to me and say, "Miss, you need to be really careful. He's going to get you. He's going to shoot you. He's going to get you. You need to be careful." I had a CO3, which is above the CO2 level. I had CO3s come up and tell me, "You need to be careful. You need to watch your back," is what I got told. So,
do you think Marcus wanted to hurt you?
Oh, 100%. I knew that. I knew he blamed me for what happened. He blamed me right from the onset.
He blamed you for him killing Tara.
I instigated it. I apparently convinced Tara to go to the police and get a DVO.
I see.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people can blame someone else for something, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, I don't feel any blame whatsoever.
No, of course not.
No.
Tell me this. Obviously, you've dealt with many people who've done horrible things. You've personally had, your life pretty much, temporarily it would have felt like it was completely destroyed losing Tara.
Oh.
Are there, do you think people are just evil? Are there people who you think are just plain bad? There's no reforming them?
I think so. Yep. I really believe that it doesn't matter what sort of influence they have with their parents, they're just born evil. I think so. I know everybody's different, but that's just my point of view. I do believe there are some people that are plain evil.
Right. Fair enough.
Yep.
I think it's probably time for our prison pop quiz. unless there's anything. Did you want to talk about anything else I haven't asked you about?
I don't think so.
I think you've done pretty.
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I think it's been a good. Let me just quickly ask you, what's the most shocking thing you've seen in a prison?
Stabbing.
Someone being stabbed?
Yes, and then seeing the aftermath.
Where were they stabbed?
All over.
Oh my God, with what, a shiv?
Yes.
Why are you smiling when you tell me this?
I don't know.
I think you're desensitized.
I truly am. I really am.
Yeah.
It does. It changes you. It's like, it's nurses, it's police. There's this strange warpness that and they say, and you say things and you think, you know what, to the normal person that does not sound right. But to a fellow correctional officer, they're laughing along beside you.
Well, that's right. If you don't laugh, you'll cry, they say, don't they?
Yeah, I don't cry.
All right, it's time for our Prison Pop Quiz, the segment where I get corrections officers to decode the slang used behind bars. And trust me, some of them are truly disgusting.
Petrol.
Petrol. What? No, I actually don't know what petrol is. What's petrol?
Methadone.
Ah, are many people on petrol?
Oh, yeah, probably half the jail. And a lot of them don't like it because it rots your teeth. It's horrible stuff. Horrible. So petrol.
Okay.
Okay, I have another one here. LOPS.
LOPS. LOPS?
Yeah.
What's that?
Loss of privileges.
Ah, that's good.
Yeah, so that guy's on LOPS.
Okay. And would you say to someone, stop doing that or you'll LOPS? No, that doesn't work, does it? I'm clearly not a correctional officer.
No. They just know if they do something wrong, depending on what it is, they could potentially be on LOPS.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to say rude ones, am I?
Yeah. You should hear some of the stuff we've heard.
Oh, really? All right. What about bang it?
Bang it?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that one.
That's it's like taking it up the arse. Sorry.
Oh, bang it. Okay.
Yeah.
And again, does that happen often?
Yes, it does. There's nothing worse than walking around doing obs on a night shift.
And seeing more than you bargained for.
Oh, correct. Something you can't unsee.
No, I can imagine that's probably burned into your mind. Okay. Next one.
All right. Shank.
Shank. What's a shank? What do you do with a shank?
Same as you do with the shiv.
Ah, same. Stabbing
Yeah.
implement.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about chief?
Don't think I know chief.
So in the Canberra jail, all the male officers are known as chief, and all the females are just called miss.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty. That's a pretty good run. Are you out, or do you have more?
Big house, but that's not hard to work out, is it?
That's just the jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Big house, nut house.
You've done pretty well, trailblazing.
Okay. That's it then. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you for coming on and sharing. Obviously all your personal stories and your time in corrections with me.
Thank you very much for having me.
I won't shank you.
Oh no, you'll know about it if you do, sunshine. I'll be hunting you down.
Thank you, Maria. You have a good afternoon. It's been so nice to talk to you. We'll catch up soon.
Okay, lovely.
Okay.
Take care.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Maria Costigan is one of the strongest women I have ever had the opportunity to speak with. Not only did she lose her niece Tara in the most horrific of circumstances, but she also bravely fronted up to work day after day, knowing she would come face to face with Tara's killer. Next episode, we meet Tony Burley, a former prison officer from Tasmania. He was trained as part of the Tactical Response Group. That meant when a riot broke out and prisoners were overpowering staff with violence and taking hostages, it was Tony they called in to restore order. His stories are as eye-watering as the tear gas he often used on his opponents. He's also got some bizarre insights into Port Arthur killer Martin Bryant. According to Tony, Bryant wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and he certainly did some exceptional acts for chocolate bars.